on Point Out Words, which is an iPad software to develop motor communication skills in individuals with severe autism. A few reminders before we begin. All participants' mics will be muted during the presentations and will be unmuted only during question and answer rounds. Also, kindly mute your videos for better audio quality. We'll be taking up a certain number of questions at the end of each presentation. So you have to hold your question till the end. You can also write your questions in the chat box or can directly clarify it with the speaker. So moving ahead with our first presentation of the day. So first two presentations will be taken up by Ms. Tanushri Saxena Chandok on communication ring and point out words. Ms. Tanushri is a speech language therapist who has working experience since 2006 in Singapore and India for individuals with disabilities across lifespan. She has worked at the Communicaids Trust for close to 10 years, providing intervention for young children with ASD while also training and developing training programs for families and professionals on speech therapy and early intervention. Currently, she is working with a team of professionals at the Specialized Assistive Technology Center at SPD in Singapore. She assesses and provides intervention for children and adults with complex communication needs and helps them get a voice through an ASC system. She has been enjoying providing telepractice sessions for them in the recent months. She also works with adults and elderly individuals with disabilities at the residential care facility, assessing and providing intervention for dysphagia and their communication needs. Welcome Tanushri for this webinar. We are more than happy to have you again with us today to help us understand the use of communication ring and point out words. I have honestly enjoyed working with you and I witnessed the perseverance, hard work and dedication you put into everything that you take up and execute. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shilpa, for the wonderful words. And thank you, Comdeal Trust, for having me again. Before I actually pull up my slides, I'd like to ask Ria to actually show you what the ring or the kit for the communication ring looks like. So I'll let her just show what's in the kit. That'll get you a better understanding of what I'll be explaining on my slides.
Good afternoon, everybody. So this is what Tanushri will be talking to us about. So this is a little pouch here that has the manual that will help us understand how to use the ring. But the main thing is right here. So this is the communication ring, and this is what is used to clip them onto clothing or bag. You can clip them onto um, anything that you can like your clothing or your bag, and this extension is what helps you access it. So if you have it around your waist, you can actually pull that up to the tabletop or to in front of the child, and the child can also, if the child is using the ring, the child can also do the same. So it is basically kept accessible for the child to use, accessible for the therapist to use. And these are the pouches that you see, the transparent pouches into which you actually put the pictures that you require to put in. Now these pictures can be pictures of places that things that the child might need immediately. So if it's for a younger child, we would look at the child expressing his basic needs. So something like toilet or snack or water, or playtime or break, or I want to wash my hands, so you can have a hand wash picture. So these are some of the basic pictures you can have. Tanushree will be talking
Maybe,
to us
yeah.
about a lot of other things that we can
Yes, yeah.
put in.
I'll add on to that through the presentation, Ria. Maybe
Yes,
probably you can just show how to show one of the pictures when there's 4 or 5 in the
yes,
ring. So
yes.
how you would do that for a child.
So you have a group of pictures here, but you would need to present one picture at a time to the child. So single pictures is what you would, this is the way you would show the picture to the child.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ria. And now I'll share my screen and we will be able to take this further. So welcome to the presentation on communication ring. This was released in 2012, and it's sort of the first step towards holistic communication for our children with ASD. And you'll understand what I mean by saying that as I move along the presentation. For those of you who were there in my previous presentation about AAC intervention manuals, you might already understand when I mean communication or when I say communication, what it means. But for the rest of you who may not have attended, I just want to bring that knowledge back and talk to you a little about AAC so that you understand why we came up with a communication ring. So communication, it encompasses many things. One is the speech or what the spoken language like you're hearing right now. That would be verbal communication. The other one would be the nonverbal communication, which we also use a lot of times to be able to understand when someone's saying something. For example, if somebody's waving from a distance, it means that they're saying bye or they're calling us. And we also have a nonverbal means of communication to express ourselves. It might be the messages on our phones. It might be a written text that we're writing so that somebody can read it instead of using speech. So it is a combination of both verbal and nonverbal that makes communication whole. But the nonverbal communication is what encompasses or what relates to augmentative and alternative communication. And this can be presented in many different ways. And there are many, many different ways that that can be done. Now, nonverbal communication or AACs, which also encompasses the uses of visuals, for example, pictures, etc., that is important when we are providing intervention for children with autism. And we know that and we've understood that because of many different reasons. One, that we understand some of the children take time to build speech, and it's not building at the pace that the other skills are, which might be the motor skills or the cognitive skills, or even the understanding or the receptive skills. But their expressive skills via speech is not developing as much. So we want to support them with some visuals or some other AAC system. Many of our children communicate in different ways, and being able to tap on that, it might be pointing or pulling somebody to their need, to be able to tap on that and make it into meaningful communication that everybody can understand is also crucial. We also know that our children learn very well through visuals. So if we supplement what we're saying through visuals, or we provide visuals so that they can tell their needs, we definitely know that's a way to go, and that is important as well. ComDeal has been using visuals in many, many different ways to build receptive skills, expressive skills, to manage expectations of the child. For example, what will come after what activity, or even to build some certain prerequisite skills like waiting. It's also been used to manage behavior. So these are just samples in which ComDeal programs have been using visuals, and the ComDeal Trusted Head Office has been using it. But what we realized and why we started building these Communicaids for AAC or for the other communication needs is to build these, there's a lot of time that is spent in preparation. As you can see, all of this requires a lot of material and time. And sometimes that is not available for the therapists or even the parents. What we also realized is some of these become bulky. So that means it's not so easy to carry around. For example, if you really want it very quickly on the go, when you're in an auto, when you're in a cab or something, and you don't have these books or these papers available, what would you do? And that's the reason we actually came up with the communication ring. We wanted a communication system which will allow for holistic communication. And I'll show you how that goes as well, to build understanding and expression while being on the go. So it had to be portable, it had to be accessible to the child and the parent, and most importantly, because it was small and because it was small, it should also be customizable. So in the communication ring, what Ria did show you, the main parts are the manual and the key ring. So the manual is what I'll talk about first. So the manual as such is a booklet that definitely talks about what the ring entails and why it has been developed. But more importantly, it talks about how to prepare it for your child. Because as I mentioned, each one of them is going to be individualized. Each child's needs are going to be different for communication. So it's important that you prepare this ring for their needs. The other thing the ring talks about is about building skills. How do I use the ring to develop, for example, an understanding for an early learner, for an early communicator, somebody who needs a lot of support from a parent, versus how do I use the ring for somebody who's already understands what the ring's for, but needs to now use it independently. So the communication ring manual actually gives these ideas, and I'll be touching upon a lot of these aspects today during the presentation in the next few minutes as well. The ring is actually a structure that we've provided. So it has the key bunch, for example, and which you can clip on, and it has 5 clear pockets within it. We have not provided the pictures inside because we know it has to be individualized, but definitely small visiting card size pictures can be placed in. What we also did is, for those of you who attended my previous presentation on Visual Kit, those particular pictures are also the same size that can be used here. So that is another thing that you can keep in mind. But you can always create your own and place them in. And as Ria mentioned, the communication ring is made so that it's handy and portable. And keeping that in mind, we want it to be clipped anywhere by the adult as well as the child. So in the first picture, you can see it might be the mother, the aunt, or the teacher, and that they're on the go with the child who needs some communication. Then they can clip it onto the bag. Or it might be the father and an uncle who needs to communicate to the child, clip it onto the belt loop. Sometimes we also want the children to use it, especially for advanced communicators. So maybe they're going to be wearing the bag for most of their travel from home to school, perhaps, and then they might need the communication ring clipped somewhere handy on their bag. So these are different ways that we have envisioned the use of the communication ring and want to make it accessible for whoever needs it with the child who can use this. So now I'm going to talk a little about how the communication can be used, the communication ring can be used. There are 2 main ways. One is for preparation. So that basically means where you're going to use the visuals and the cards to get the child to understand. So you're building some amount of receptive skill. So you're preparing them and letting them understand what is coming up. You're also managing behaviors in that manner. And I'll talk to you a little about how. The other bit is about communication to build expressive skills in this particular case. So let's delve a little into the preparation aspect. So as I mentioned, sometimes you want to prepare a child or provide an understanding of what is coming next. For example, I've had children that I work with where the families say, if I don't keep to the structure and we have a change in our structure, for example, routine, my child gets very restless. At that point in time, a strong strategy to provide is talk about and let the child know or let the child be prepared of the change in the structure. And the best way to do that is while providing visuals. Now, for example, if the child has to go from home to school, and that particular day, the child is not going to go to school, but needs to go maybe shopping, to an aunt's place, to a doctor's clinic, it's very important that you can talk about the places that the child might have to go for that day. For example, in the picture, if you look, so now we're going to be at home. Next, we're going to school on a school day. But if the child's not going for school or going to school, you might have a picture, for example, of the dentist's office. And you're going to prepare the child visually by showing the pictures and sequencing, showing them first we're at home, then we're going to. And that's how we can prepare a child to know about the places that they are going to. Preparation is not only about where we're going and managing behaviors in that way, but also sometimes we want the child to understand what is expected of their behavior. And the most important, or one of the easy examples when we look into a school or early intervention setup, is the classroom schools. So in school, you're expected to sit down, hands quiet, and quiet time, for example. So you're going to have those pictures presented into the communication ring, and you're going to show the child one after the other what is the behavior that's expected in that particular situation. When we have a preparation, many times we talk about showing this before you actually have the event. So before you actually start school day, before you go to school, you want to do this on the go. So a parent might be able to, who has clipped the communication ring onto their bag, show it to the child while they're sitting in an auto and going to school. That makes this ring very handy as well. Another way this ring can be used is to build understanding of what they can expect from a situation. So it's not only what we expect, but what the child might expect. Like the places, what place will the child expect? Similarly, what other aspects will the child expect from a situation? For example, if it's cutting hair, you're going to have to sit still, you're going to wear a cape, uncle will come or auntie will come with scissors, go snip, snip, snip. And then at the end of the day, Barbara auntie always likes to give a chocolate, so you're going to get a chocolate as well. So that way, you're actually building expectation of what might happen. And many times this manages behavior in our children with ASD as well. And this is a great way to supplement how social stories have been used and what, for those of you who attended, what Nirupama had spoken about as well. So this is also very important to remember. So there are 3 different ways you can build understanding for the child through the communication ring. This is actually the communication ring in action at the DEALL Trust head office. So as you can see, the therapist is actually showing this classroom behaviors or the rules through the picture of the communication ring. One picture at a time, flashed to an individual child to help the child understand what the expectations are from them. Another way to use the ring is for communication per se. So it might be to largely build expressive skills through it and some amount of understanding as well. And I'll talk to you about how. There are two main ways that we look at this. One is how can a child ask for basic needs or wants? In case the child wants something, how can a child ask for it on the go or immediately? It's always handy to have pictures around or clipped next to you so that you can give the child choices. For example, this particular picture at the bottom is a picture of written. So this means that the child who's going to get to see this can actually understand written text. So what we would do if a child is getting restless, for example, when we're sitting with them in an auto, and we know generally what they get restless with, we will have those cards put inside the communication ring. And then when we realize the child is restless, we will try to ask the child one by one. Do you want to go to the toilet? Snacks? Water? Do you have any pain? And see and try to get the child to actually show an indication of what might be there. And I'll show you a photo of how that goes as well later on. Another way for a child to show basic needs is when the child is a little more advanced in their communication. That means they understand that these rings actually have meaning and they mean something. So when I point at it, the person understands who I'm showing it to. So at that point, maybe we can also work on independent use of it. So you can clip the ring onto the child. It might be a belt loop, it might be something else hanging on them, or maybe a bag like I showed you earlier. So you will get the child to actually pull out the ring by themselves, because we're working on independence of communication, and then flip through the pages that are there to be able to show or point what they mean. So if a child, for example, has to go to the toilet and they're in a mall, for example, the child who is independently using this will pull it out, show the toilet card to the person they're with, their mommy, papa, or whoever. And that is a great way that basic needs can be fulfilled, and they have it accessible on them all the time. So this is an example from a session between a therapist and a child. They're doing a one-on-one activity. And all of a sudden, this child gets very restless. The therapist has the communication ring in hand, and she has the most basic needs in it. The minute this girl got a little restless, the therapist asked, "Can you tell me what you are? What is happening? Can you tell me why you're uncomfortable?" And she's flipping through them. What you can see here is that the child is actually looking at each of the choices given. And at the end of it, because she has been using this for a while, she's able to clearly make her choice by pointing at what she wanted. And at that point, she just wanted kurkure because she wanted a break from her session. But this is a great way to understand rather than saying, okay, you have to stop now, stop your cries. You're actually trying to understand what the child means by their expression of crying or otherwise. And you have the ring very handy to be able to communicate some basic needs if you have them in the pictures already. Another way the communication ring can actually be used for communication is through social events. Now, when I mean social events, it can be as basic as saying hello or bye-bye. And there are many times many of our children might go to a playground with us, or they might enter a gathering where they're familiar. They have cousins around, but they don't know how to actually initiate what they want to say at that point in time. And it can be as basic as saying hello to everybody. So what we want this communication ring to be able to do is provide the words that they want at that point. So maybe we can actually flash the picture hi to them so that they remember they can wave. Or we can ask the child to hold this picture and show it to their friend that they want to begin talking to. So this can be used in many different ways just to initiate communication. At times, the children also want to reciprocate. For example, if someone said, "Hi, how are you?" and they want to say a bit more. Again, depending on the level of the child, you might have more words or pictures inside. And the child might be able to say very basic things, but important things to be able to keep a conversation going. Like, "I'm well. Where have you been? Long time." So it really depends what level the child is at. Initially, a parent might be showing the pictures to get the child to use it more often. But with constant repetition and constant training, the child might be able to use it by himself and begin to reciprocate by himself as well with the use of the pictures. So those are some of the ways that the communication ring can be used. So definitely, because it's handy, it can be used in many, many different ways. But it's very important that the pictures are individualized. And you must remember what you are targeting at that point in time. We don't look at these pictures or these rings to be an activity of "tell me what this is" or "point to the." Now, for example, if your focus is on greeting, just to do hello to everybody, we want to reinforce using it in many different ways. And because the ring is available all the time, it'll be easy for a parent to pull out the picture and actually show it to the child again and again in many different opportunities. And that's what's important, and that's what's building skill. We don't really want the child to be say, "Okay, where is the picture of hello? Point to the picture of hello." That's not communication. That's not what we're focusing on. We're focusing on repetition with the use of visuals to be able to get communication going. The other way a bit to remember is because we're individualizing the pictures, we can keep communication motivating. Like the picture of the child who wanted kurkure, we knew what her motivators were and what it was that would actually get her uncomfortable. So we keep communication natural and motivating that way. And we always try to see whether we can understand what the child means by the body language. And we can connect that with the pictures easily because we have the ring available very closely as well. So definitely this ring makes communication accessible for teachers, for parents, for therapists. It's easily portable. Put it on your bag, clip it onto your belt hook, clip it onto the child's bag, and we're on the go with it. And that's what we wanted to do with communication. It allows for quick preparation. You just have to be very closely tuned to what pictures are needed. But it also allows quick repetitions, many repetitions, and also to be able to manage a child's behavior easier because you're keeping the communication going again and again. It allows a child to understand the routine very quickly because you can do reminders just before the child's, for example, going for a haircut, just before the child's going into school. So you're already preparing them and you can do it very often because you have the communication ring close by. It helps build communication and in the long run can build spontaneous or independent communication as well. And for children who use some speech, but sometimes they're unable to, this will be a good visual reminder so that they know exactly, okay, I'm supposed to say hello here. I see, because I see the visual of hello. So these are some of the ways that the kit can be useful for the adults and the children. Here is a feedback from the ComDeal staff at the head office on how they've used the ring. And I want to point out one bit that Lakshmi Priya does talk about. She says that instead of verbally instructing the child all the time, there you will present the visuals alone. And sometimes it's just that that's what we need. So instead of constantly telling the child to keep quiet or sit down, you might just want to present the visual. And having it handy on you makes it very easy to do as well. Here is some more feedback from other therapists. And if you're keen to explore the use of Communicaids with your children, please visit the website here. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you so much, Tanu. That was very informative session. Uh, we'll take up few questions and few towards the end. So the first question, which is asked by Mr. Piyush, is what makes these communication rings different or useful over flashcards used in therapeutics?
Okay. My question, I would actually ask that back a little, Mr. Piyush. I would actually ask that the flashcards, what are you using the flashcards for? If you can elaborate on that, then I can tell you.
Mr. Piyush, you can unmute yourself and talk about it, maybe. And
Good
those,
afternoon, ma'am.
yeah,
Hello.
Hello.
yes,
Hello.
yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I have been using these flashcards for speech therapeutics of hearing impaired children.
Okay. So it's to build concepts, is it? For example,
Yes, for
big, small.
for,
Okay.
for
So
concepts.
okay. So actually, when we talk about something like the communication ring or the visual kit, we're actually looking at it more on communication, not just concept building. Now, they're very different things. So, for example, there is a fine line between them, but they're very different things. For example, the concepts that you can build is big and small, and you can train it in different ways at different times. For example, in a session, you might actually have a big ball, small ball, you might have a big box, small box, etc. So keeping that in mind, you're going to only work on concepts. But communication really comes in is when you teach the word big in a more motivating and realistic situation where the child wants to speak about big. Now, it might be a big roti piece, a big chocolate piece, and the child might want to talk about it. It's not something that, where is the big piece? Oh, you want the big piece. And that's where a flash, the big on the communication ring will make sense as well, versus when you're just teaching a concept. I hope that's clear.
Ma'am, I'm still confused in it because when I just saw these wings in your presentations, they were kind of like similar of those flashcards that we use in the therapeutics. So
I
those
think,
flash,
hmm,
yes, those flashcards can also be made or converted into these wings, the communication wings, if some sort of technicality is used. I mean, what makes them peculiar over those? I just want to know its uniqueness.
understand. Okay, maybe I wasn't clear. So definitely the same pictures can be put inside, but the reason for which you're going to be using the pictures will be totally different. You're not going to be testing the child or teaching the child what that concept means. At this time, when you use it for communication, a child will be using it in a more natural way. So, for example, like I use the example of big and small. So a child will be using the word big to indicate what they want more or big of. And you're not going to be testing the child when you're using the communication ring. For example, you'll not be flipping through and you're saying, where is big? That's not the aim of communication ring. The aim of the communication ring is to be natural and saying, I am giving you a big piece of chocolate. Or the child will point out and say, I want the big piece of chocolate. It's not where is big and where is small. So the use will be different. You might have the same pictures because that's available for you, which is okay. But the use of it is going to be totally different. One is more academic or more targeted at just building understanding, which is important. But the function of the communication ring is to build it for communication, is to build it beyond what is. It's to build it for natural communication that you might have with the child. I hope that cleared it a bit more.
Yes, all I get is we are a little bit of elaborating the concepts to the child or to the pictures, right? Not just for awareing the child. We are a little bit of, giving information like this is a giant elephant or something like that. I
Yes, in a
got it.
more natural way, in a
Yes,
repetitive way, in a very communicative way. It's like
clever
how you
method.
would talk to me and you wouldn't say, okay, where is the big color? Or like, where's the picture big? That you wouldn't be doing. But you're doing more natural, like, oh, I want the big one. Why do you have the small one? So, sort of that way. Maybe we can chat about that some other time.
Okay, ma'am.
That's
Thank you
very
very much.
important. Yeah, thanks.
Um, are there any questions?
There's one question that I
Uh,
see.
which
So,
the keyring is used for autism children. That one?
no, in your
Yes.
experience, I didn't read that. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
maybe I'll
Yes.
answer both. And
Yes.
so, is the keyring used for children with autism? Yes, definitely. We many times our interest in developing Communicaids is from our needs for working with children with autism, and a lot of the pointers that I mentioned, for example, it having visuals with written, and you supplement what you're saying by showing the pictures, um, is one of a very important point for our children as well. And the use of this becomes important also for our children because sometimes our children might not speak as quickly as they're understanding. They're understanding a lot more. So it becomes important to have different ways to have to get them to communicate. And to answer Bhuvna, in my experience, has anyone used the ring and how long it's taken? Unfortunately, I haven't been able to use it for a long time. I don't know if the ComDeal staff have any experience to share.
Okay. The experience that we have to share, Ms. Bhuvna, we will take it up tomorrow, and we will open the forum for discussion. And at that time, we can discuss the same at a stretch. So we have a shortage of time.
Yeah.
We'll just move on to our other presentation, which is on point out words. And we also have Mr. Professor Matthew Belmonte here as our guest, and yeah, he's waving hi to everyone. So over to you, Tanushri.
Okay, thank you. So I'll try to share this. If at any point you can't hear, please do let me know. Okay, so I'm just quickly going to share. So I'll be talking about Point Out Words. It is a free iOS app that was released in 2017. I want to point out that this is meant to be used with caregivers, parents, or therapists. So it's meant to be mediated with the parents. And this is an app that's meant to build through games, meant to build specific motor skills and motor sequencing skills. And you'll see how that happens as I go along the presentation. At the initial stage of development, Point Out Words was made with a partnership from the Groden Center, U.S. National Science Foundation, Madrat Games, which is a gaming development company in Bangalore, and the ComDeal Trust, which was involved in the trials, development, as well as the piloting of the initial product of Point Out Words. So unfortunately, I'll have to skip this, but I will share the link where you can see these videos. Because of technical difficulties, we aren't able to play it. But this is a video of Professor Matthew Belmonte, talking about how this app came about. And Professor Belmonte, who's a reader in psychology at Nottingham Trent University, and he's also a visiting researcher at the ComDeal Trust, has been involved in creating the app since its beginning. Okay, so I'm going to quickly touch upon why this app was developed, and I'm sure Professor Belmonte or ma'am can chime in. At the ComDeal Trust, we noticed that there were a lot of children, almost 1/3 of the children, that had specific profiles where the children remained minimally verbal or nonverbal. And in those children, it was noticed that their understanding was better than their expressive skills. So they were understanding a lot more, but unable to express themselves in any modality verbally through speech. Another aspect that was noticed as those children also had a good grasp or a better cognitive skills. So that means they had skills like matching, which they were able to do quite well. And the gap between the understanding and expressive was quite large. Through research and through an understanding over the years of these children, it was seen that these children also had some areas in the motor skills that were affected. The gross motor skills, as well as the fine motor and the oromotor skills. So in a way, these were considered prerequisites. These motor skills, the manual motor and the oromotor skills, were considered prerequisites to help with communication. So what was noticed is that if we provide intervention, and it was envisioned that if we provide intervention to those prerequisite skills, which can include shaping of the finger for pointing, sequential movements of the fingers to do different things, and even sequential movements of speaking, that these children will be able to learn communication and may be able to even learn speech or verbal communication as well. So through this app, they actually wanted to provide practice in those areas. Again, mediated by a parent or a therapist, they wanted to heighten the practice in these prerequisite areas, not to forget that regular intervention will continue. So in this app, the question was, how do we ensure that the children stay motivated? And they wanted to actually look at it from the point of the child's strength. Many of our children with ASD are interested in specific parts and details, and they're good with matching, and puzzles is something that interests them as well. And from that came the notion of point out words. So point out words is, again, to be used with a trainer, caregiver, or a parent, and it develops many skills along a hierarchy. It develops motor and motor sequencing skills through working on pointing, typing, and speaking. And I'll talk about these three modalities as I show you the app as well. The great thing about the app is that you can customize the different modalities and the different skills that you need to target on to individualize it for the child's need. And that's where it's important that the parent is involved at all times. So I'm going to take a minute just to stop sharing. Okay, someone's mic is on. Okay. It'll be helpful if you can manage the mic. Whoever's mic is on, can you please switch it off? Okay. Okay, I'm just trying to get the share screen going. Okay, just a few more seconds. Okay. So I'm going to show you the iPad app, Point Out Words. So this is on the iPad, and because I'm sharing screen, you won't see my fingers, but I'll try to show you with the pointer that I have on the screen. So when I go into Point Out app, I'll show you the different features that you can look at. As you go in, you can actually swipe on the tab. You can swipe on the screen and you get to see 5 different scenes. And they're many times associated with what the child is familiar with or things that the child enjoys in daily life as well. So I'm going to choose any one scene and we'll stick with that. So I've chosen this one. One great thing that I mentioned is this bit, which is a customization. And to make sure that the child doesn't keep pressing the customization, this actually is only activated when you long press it, and I'm pressing for quite a while. This is a customization panel. So you are able to customize what you want to work on. Do you want to work on pointing, typing, speaking? Do you want any background music, as well as the prompts that you want to provide? And I'll talk a little more about that. Then within each bit, for example, pointing, you can definitely customize further, pointing, typing, and speaking. And over here on top that you see is called the progress bar. So for each scene, as the child completes specific pictures within it, it will show a progression of how the child has done, whether the child has completed successfully or not, and that will give you an idea of how the child progresses. So now I've selected only the pointing. So if I only want to work on pointing, which is actually the learning or the initial stages that I would use with the app for many of the children, I would select that and then I'll go on the X. So now I'm going to choose book, for example. And this is pointing, where we're actually working on the motor skill of pointing and dragging. So I'm actually going to touch this and drag it to where it's required. Some of our children might not be able to exactly be accurate as to where they're going to point, so they might miss a little. And some of them might not be accurate in terms of where it goes. They might miss a bit again. And that's where the customization feature also plays an important part. Should the actual piece snap back? How accurate does a child have to be in terms of touching the piece? How close does the child have to be in terms of the location of where it needs to go? And that's very important when you're looking at successes, because at the end of the day, you're trying to get errorless learning. That means you want absolute many successes that the child has so that they continue to be motivated to use it. Once this is completed, there is a praise, which you might have been able to see. You might have been able to hear over there. Again, with the help from the feedback from the therapist as well as the children who were using or trialing the app initially, the praise or the prompts was very important. You might even want to switch off the prompts, and that might happen when, as a therapist or a parent, you know that the child does better when you say the prompts or how you say the prompts. So you might want to do it in person. But if you do want to customize it, you can go to the record button and actually customize your own praises, for example, like I did over here. So for something that's hard, or the parts that are hard, that's the sort of feedback given. For something that's easy, I want a very simple praise, for example. And it was just like, great job. Okay, go on, let's carry on. So of course, those are some things that we can do. And this sort of customization or iteration to the development was done with the feedback that was got from the children as well as the therapists that were using it. So now I'll work on another area, which is type, and I'll only work on type. Again, this has one customization that you can do, which is the animation or the cues that it has. Now, again, I'm going to take book. In this particular one, you're going to start to get the child to sequence the motor movements and learn how to find specific keys on the keyboard. So they're not going to be dragging. So if I start pressing a piece instead of the actual icon over here, it will give a cue of where I should be actually going. And it also gives a very clear visual cue with the glow, which is important and has been seen to be important for a lot of our children. At the end of it, you're going to be trying to get the child to, you want the child to complete typing it out as well. The last part of point out words, or the last customization, is on speak. This would be used for children who are minimally verbal or who are able to do it, because many of the children that we envision to use this are in severe, or they are minimally verbal or non-verbal. So when they're minimally verbal, we can actually work on their oromotor sequencing, or sequencing of muscles to help with speech if possible. So we'll use the speech mode. This particular the app was developed in such a way that it allows for some errors when you're talking, but of course, or when you're detecting what is being said. But of course, you can also customize how clear the child should be in speaking, or what clarity of pronunciation the child should have in speaking. So now let me demonstrate that. Go back to book. Okay, so it gave the cue of what I should say. I'm going to say book. It detects what I said, book. And if the therapist or the parent sees and notices that it's not detected clearly, or the child has said it to the best of their ability, they can actually pass. And that's where you're going to the errorless learning. And it's very important that the parent is involved during the process as well. So these are a few of the features that are important to remember and that make it very useful. So definitely this uses puzzles as a way to learn all the aspects for pointing, for typing, as well as speech too. So I'm just going to go back to the presentation very quickly. Okay. So as I said, during this use of this, you want it to be mediated by the caregiver, the parent, or the trainer. And you want them to support the learning, trying to make it errorless if possible. So you want them to fill in the responses where the child cannot, correct the child if the child is not able to independently do it, and also bring the child's attention back if the child is waving his attention or starts looking around. And you can kind of see this in some of these. I don't think the audio is working, but you can definitely see the video, and I'll talk through it. So the therapist is giving a cue, a verbal as well as a visual cue, as to where the piece should be. The child gets encouragement when he finishes a piece by the therapist, and keeps getting encouraged when he loses interest. So she's saying, try again. So now the therapist is actually helping to make sure the child remains motivated and can actually continue learning. Okay, I'm going to stop that and move on to the next one. This is another very simple, the first part of the drag. you can see how the therapist actually does it initially, and then how the child is motivated enough to complete the task. A little help from the therapist and encouragement verbally is given. As you can see, the child was very good with this and able to be motivated to complete it. So we can work on perhaps the next level for him as well. And this is an example of trial typing, the typing that was done. The therapist demonstrates it at first. So she's giving a verbal and visual cue and completing the task. Child is interested, but he's still trying to point because that's what he's learned. She's going to try to help him to understand the concept of pointing on the keyboard. And she helps him a little while providing verbal prompts. Continues to encourage him to continue. So she says, we need to finish. Her prompts reduce, and the child actually starts doing it on his own. So these are just initial ways that children can be helped to use it. And you can see how the movements are being practiced again and again through something that they enjoy. Again, the video I won't be able to play because the audio is not playing. I'll share a link of where you can watch this. But this particular app, after it was iterated and developed at the Communicaids Trust with the children, and it was piloted there, it then got piloted in England, Nottingham, Peterborough, and Cambridge. And at that point in time, they were checking how well it will fit into the therapy regime that was there for children with severe autism or who are minimally verbal or nonverbal. And they also wanted to do this trial or pilot to see how well it was accepted by the children with autism. And there's a great feedback by one of the parents or one or two of the parents that actually used it. And they talk about how it's helped in many, many ways for their children. So you can watch that perhaps in your own time. So currently, a feasibility study is being closed, and that was a randomized control feasibility study that was done in England, largely in Peterborough area with the NHS. And as I understood from what Professor Belmonte mentioned, though this was a shorter study of around 8 weeks, in the children that it was tried, this particular app was seen to help how they use the motor skills, how they use the visual motor skills, how they found the specific targets, how they moved the targets to the actual destination actually improves. The efficacy of the movement actually improved as well. So definitely through this feasibility study, there are areas that were positive. And now hopefully there'll be more studies to see how well it can kind of further develop motor skills that might be the underlying areas to further communication skills as well. So you can definitely find this app. It's a free app. You can use the QR code to actually find the app and try it out. But a couple of things that I do want to remind while you do try it out, that it must be used along with a parent, a therapist, or a trainer. So it has to be mediated so you can support the child through the learning and actually move up from pointing, typing to speaking as the child needs. And the app is meant or was developed keeping in mind children who have a profile of better understanding than expressive skills and some good amount of cognitive skills. And those are the ones that generally present themselves with nonverbal abilities, or they have minimally verbal abilities to communicate. So that was what this particular app, or for whom this particular app was developed. So if you want to see a tutorial, the QR code is available. You can just scan it to see as well. So that's it for the presentation. Thank you.
So there is one question which I think Professor Belmonte can answer. Is this app available on Android?
Hiya. Yeah, unfortunately, it is not. And we had the funds to develop for either iOS or Android, and for better or worse, at the time, iOS seemed more compelling. If I were doing it again, I probably would choose Android. But what we would like to do in the longer term is if we can show that uh, this app would help people sort of graduate, as it were, uh, to more versatile AAC methods, or letterboards, keyboards, that kind of thing. If we can prove that it is actually effective, then we would be able to make a case for getting more funds for an Android port. I will also say that the entire app, all of the source code, everything is publicly available. It's an open source license. You can go to the website that's in the chat and download all of the source code. So if anybody who's tech savvy wants to develop an Android port, more power to you. You can have the code.
Thank you, Professor. Um, are there any further questions? Okay. Thank you, Tanushree, for this wonderful experience. So moving on to our next presentation, I would like to introduce my colleague and partner, Miss Ria Jose. Miss, I would like everyone to mute yourself, please. Miss Ria Jose is a speech-language pathologist by profession and has been with the Comdeal Trust for about 8 years from now, about 8 years. She is a trained group leader and has been a part of teams for the group programs running at the head office. Ms. Ria currently coordinates the diagnostic activities at the center and also enthusiastically takes part in planning, preparing, and conducting training programs. She bears excellent listening and writing skills and portrays perfection in whatever she does. Over to you, Ria.
Thank you, Shilpa. Thank you very much. And I'm actually very happy that I get a chance to talk about a few Communicaids here. Thank you, Dr. Karant, for that. Um, so I just want to share slides first. Just one moment. Yes, so I'm here to talk about kindly unmute. Kindly mute yourselves during the presentation. That would be helpful. Thank you. So I'm here to talk about two Communicaids which are looking at higher language skills, what we SLPs will call higher language skills. But not to say that these skills cannot be, you know, enhanced or worked on with younger children right from very young. These are, so first I will be talking about the WLBH kit, which is looking at syntax and semantics. So these are the two components of language that this kit is really looking at. So the kit really has the manual, the training manual as in all Communicaids, to help the user understand what to do with the kit, how to use the various contents in the kit. So here there is the manual, and we also have picture cards or stimulus cards specifically for the semantics bit and for the syntax bit. So just to give you an idea of what exactly we're talking about, or what are the skills we're really looking at when we're talking about semantics, and what are the skills that we're looking at when we're talking about syntax. So semantics includes the very basic vocabulary building, and also some other sections on polar questions, on developing an understanding of semantic anomaly, paradigmatic
I am not.
relations, syntagmatic relationships, opposites, or what we call antonyms, semantic similarity, semantic contiguity. So these are some of the skills that we're looking at when we're talking about semantics. So semantics basically,
Ria, just
yeah,
to interrupt you in between, can you try share screen again, because none of us can see your screen.
sure, just one moment. Can you all see now?
Yes.
All right, all right. Yeah. Okay, so like I was saying, the WLBH kit has the manual, the training manual that the users can use to understand what are the components of the kit and how to actually use the kit. And you also have picture stimulus cards that are looking at addressing sections in the semantics and sections in the syntax. So to give you an idea of what sections or what skills we're looking at in each of these sections, I just wanted to display the contents. So we're looking at these skills when we're talking about semantics or within the semantics section. And we're looking at skills like case markers, tense markers, plurals, transitives, sentence types in the syntax section. So this was largely taken up because um, sections like or components of language like the phonology or morphology, these are sections that have extensive work already been done in them, and we already have a lot of resource material, a lot of activity ideas that are out there for us to use during our sessions or therapy sessions with the children. But we didn't really have anything focusing on these components of language. And I'll come to pragmatics later, but I'll talk about these two sections within the WLBH kit. So what exactly is in the manual? The manual gives us an idea of specifically what skills we are trying to build within each of these sections, like I mentioned, within semantics and within syntax. And so it really talks about the name of the skill, as in what is the skill you're looking at, gives you a description of the skill, and actually tells you how to go about using the picture cards to build the skill. Another thing that I'd like to highlight here is that the manual actually tells you what is the hierarchy that you need to follow while you are teaching the skill, or while you are looking to build the skill. So it actually goes from a very basic level where you're getting the child to familiarize with what is expected to know of the skill, and also to use the skill. So the familiarization stage, so this is just one example. So in each skill, you actually have this hierarchy that you need to follow. So the familiarization stage, and then it can be any particular activity. In this case, there's a matching activity, which actually helps the child understand the skill, and actually builds the skill, helps build the skill. And then you actually have the identification. In this case, identification would be the target skill. Um, um, to give you another example, you would have naming, or you would have at the end of this hierarchy a generalization stage where you're actually ensuring that the child has understood this concept and is actually able to apply this in his day-to-day um, uh, conversation situations. So just to give you an example, let's say we're looking at paradigmatic relations, which is in the semantics section. So semantics is basically looking at word meaning and word relationships. So under that section, you actually have this skill where you want the child to understand. So this is basically knowing the odd one out, or to be able to find the odd one out. So let's say we're working on paradigmatic relations, and I have this section in the manual that actually tells us how to go about teaching this skill and following that hierarchy that I mentioned earlier. And in this section of the manual, which is at the back of the manual, as in towards the end of the manual, you actually have this section that tells you which card numbers are meant for this particular section in semantics, and what is the stimulus that you need to use, as in what is it that you need to say when you are presenting the card. So that is really what is, so that is very clearly explained in this section of the manual. So going back to this example of odd one out. So how do I help the child understand, first of all, what is odd or what is different? And how do I eventually get him to identify what's different, and also to be able to explain or express why this is different, the reason of why you think this particular picture is different from the rest. So going to the, yeah, so if suppose I'm doing this for the first time, I present the cards one by one as I'm placing them on the table in front of the child. I say um, walking or running, swimming, flower, and washing. So as I'm presenting each picture, I'm actually describing what is in the picture. And then if I'm still in the familiarization stage, so if I'm doing this for the first time with the child, like I mentioned, I will be talking to the child about the different the things that are happening in the picture, or what is in the picture as I'm presenting the picture to him. And then I would actually talk about these are actions and this is not an action. And I would actually flip this picture over to the blank side, or I would take away this picture from, move it away from the other three pictures on the table and say, these are similar, or these are action words, or these are actions, and this is not an action, and move it away. So this is different, or this is the odd one out. So in my familiarization stage, this is what I would do. Eventually, what I would be looking at is I would actually, once this level is over and the child is ready to actually talk about, so suppose you have done the same number of, let's say you've done 2-3 trials of odd one out, and the child has familiarized with those 2-3 sets of pictures, then you actually get the child to um, talk about which one is odd. So it's his turn to tell which one is odd and why he thinks it's odd. And then in the generalization stage, there are ideas where they say you can actually move from a simple set that you're presenting to the child to a little more complex set. So here they've given an example where you're presenting 4 fruits to the child, and you're actually moving to a simple set like moving from a simple set like I showed you here. So here it's quite obvious what the odd one out is, but they have given you examples here of little where you actually go to a complex level. You present four fruits to the child, so it's in the same category of fruits, but then there's a little more detailing in terms of banana, orange, and jackfruit are fruits that you peel before eating, and apple is not. So those finer details, you actually move from more obvious sets to more complex sets where you have to look at finer nuances or finer details and actually find the odd one out. So this is a hierarchy that you need to follow and actually move from simple to complex depending on the level at which the child is. So when you finish, so this would be one set, the first four cards would be one set, and then you go to the next, next set of four cards, and the next, and the next, and the next. We wouldn't really stop there. We wouldn't stop with what is available in the kit or in the manual. So this is something that I really want to mention to all the therapists or the professionals here, or even the parents and other users who are actually going to be using the manual or find this useful, that you don't really stop at what is available in the kit. You can go beyond this, what the pictures that are available, the picture cards that are available, you can make your own. It all depends on what level the child is at. So you can actually extend and go beyond what is available here. This is largely a model for you to follow and to know how to go about working on the skills, those particular skills for a child. But you take this as an example and actually go beyond this and customize material for the child, so that you ensure that you're working on the skills and also helping the child stabilize those skills across different situations. So in all of the in each of these sections, for each of the skills, you'll actually notice that there is a generalization stage. There is a generalization phase which comes at the end of that hierarchy, where you're ensuring that the child has understood the concept, is able to express or use the concept, and also is able to use it in different situations. So that generalizing at that stage is really where you can extend and use your own ideas to help the child generalize. So that is the with a little bit of help kit. So, and this is the link that you can go to buy your own kit. Do note that the manuals for the kit are available in different Indian languages, including Hindi, Kannada, Tamil, Malayalam, Bangla. So this is really helpful for families or parents to understand what kind of skills we are looking at and to help them build it in their children, build these skills in their children. So that's one thing that I wanted to talk about. The other is with respect to pragmatics. So just give me one moment.
Thank you, Ria. I think you can start with pragmatics, and we will be
Yeah,
taking the questions together on both the presentations.
sure. So are you all able to see the slides, Shilpa?
Yes, we can see.
All right. So, so the pragmatics kit. So that's the other component of language where we felt that this was mainly developed because we felt that in terms of resources to help children build these skills, there were very few resources at that point of time. So and we found a lot of children who have fair to good amount of language, and they also know even expressive language, but to be able to use it in specific social situations. So that's where a lot of children had difficulties, and we felt the need to actually develop something that we can use in therapies, and even families can use to help the child build these skills. So what exactly are we looking at when we're saying pragmatic skills? Like I said, it is basically the use of uh, language in your social situations. So to be able to understand what to say, how to say it, and when to say it. That's what pragmatics is. So we have the basic kit looking at eye contact, greeting, labeling, affirmation, negation, and requesting. And we have the advanced kit looking at proximity, turn taking, referential communication, conversational repair, revision, and stylistic variation. So basic kit, as I mentioned, it was developed for children with pragmatic difficulties. It was developed as part of a dissertation work released in 2005. And here again, it is looking at providing the user with a model. So to give the user an idea of how to work on these skills for the children, how to build these skills in the children. So I mentioned all of this. So what are the contents of the kit? So you have the manual, which guides us on how to use each of the things inside the kit. The booklets. So the booklets actually have illustrations, pictures to help the child understand the concept. There's a board game that's available. I'll talk to you about that. Face masks and face cards, eye masks and face cards, sorry, and the finger puppets. So how does the manual help? So just like all other manuals that we've developed, the manual talks about what skill you're looking at, gives you a description of the skill, and gives you a description of the illustrations that are there in the booklet for each of the skills. So some of the highlights that are there some of the highlights of the pragmatic kit is that the illustrations are in story format. So the children will actually relate to these. So for example, if you're looking at pictures within the eye gaze booklet. So here we actually talk about what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. Give description to the child and actually talk to the child about using the pictures. Talk to the child about what is appropriate and what is not appropriate, or um, giving a consequence. If the mother was calling out to the child did not look, and what is the response that you see in the mother. You actually see that the mother doesn't seem too happy about it because the child is not looking, versus you have the mother call out to the child and has come into the room to talk to the child looks at the mother, and so you see that the mother is actually happy about it, or the mother has taken it well. So basically giving the idea of what's not appropriate and what would be more appropriate. So you saw one example of an example of one situation for eye gaze, and you have similarly few more situations which are different. So that gives the child an understanding of how the same concept is is applicable in different situations. So it helps the child generalize skills across situations. So you actually see three different situations. So this is a situation at home, a situation in school, or let's say a situation with a therapist, or even a situation with the mother during activity time at home. So it gives you different situations, gives the child different situations that in which he can understand the same context, same concept. To make the concept learning or the concept building fun, there is the board game and the finger puppets. So through the board game is actually similar to snake and ladder. It's called rope and ladder, and it has scenarios or situations, both positive and negative. So to give you some examples of the positive, you have you looked at daddy and said bye, or it can just be you looked at daddy when he was talking to you. You said bye to daddy when he was leaving to work. So these are positive situations versus negative situations. To give you similar ideas, you did not look at mommy when she was talking to you or when she was calling out to you, and you did not say hi when someone greeted you. So giving these situations and saying that if you whenever you're at a stop where there's something positive happen, you actually go up the ladder, and when you're at a stop where there's a negative situation, you actually go down the rope. So it's similar to snakes and ladders. So this kind of gives the in a very fun way, gives the child an idea of, again, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And finger puppets, of course, to actually do a lot of role play and make the learning fun. The other highlights are that you can use this in group settings as well as in one-on-one settings. And the situations, the concepts that are introduced through the booklets and the situations created are, very much encouraging, and encourages the child to use the concept even in real life situations. The advanced kit is looking at, so this kit can be used with children who have some amount of the basic skills, which is the greeting, the requesting, labeling. So this is next in hierarchy. So once the child has fairly good skills in the basic section, then you can move to using or working on the advanced skills. So this was also developed as part of a dissertation work and released in 2006. It basically has the manual and again booklets that have illustrations in it to help the child understand and build on these skills. Again, we are looking at comprehensive pictures, so it definitely helps the child understand. We're looking at it across different situations, so it definitely addresses the core issue of generalization. As I mentioned before, this works as a model, so you need to go beyond what is the contents of this and actually look at what are the skills that the child has, what are the skills that the child needs to have, in which particular situations, or which particular situations does the child have to generalize these skills to. So that is really specific to each child. So we need to use this as a model and build on the situations beyond just what is mentioned here. So just to give you an idea of what exactly is the skill and how it relates to, as in what is mentioned in the manual and how it relates to the illustration in the booklet, in the respective booklet. So in the manual, you actually have, like in all manuals, what is the stimulus that you need to give, or what is it that you need to talk about when you're presenting this picture. How do you present this picture, and what is the description you need to give to this picture? So that is really what is mentioned in the manual, and these are the kind of illustrations that are there in the booklet. Yes, I think I've mentioned this a couple of times. So it is important to go beyond what is mentioned here, or go beyond the scope of what is mentioned here, and make it more specific or more customized to each of the children that you're using the kits with, and helping children build skills. So these are the links to each of the pragmatic kits, both basic and advanced. Thank you. I think we can take up questions now.
May I request everyone to unmute yourself? Those of you who have questions regarding pragmatic kit and WLPH, that is with little bit of help, you can ask Miss Ria Jose directly. There is a question which maybe Dr. Karan can address it. How is with little bit of help different from linguistic profile test?
It is not different. The linguistic profile test was designed to elicit the knowledge of a child or an adult in the areas of syntax and semantics. And the kit was developed on the same framework to provide intervention for children and adults like aphasics who have difficulty in using these different aspects of language. I hope that answers your question.
Miss Kamalika?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
She says yes.
Yes. Are there any further questions?
There is another question, whether there is criteria for moving from one level to another. Actually, when you administer the LPT, you will identify whether the child has deficit in terms of largely syntax or semantics, or in both areas. There are norms available for children from the age of 6 years to 15 years. They've been published and they're available on academia.edu. Based on that, you can start intervention depending on the chronological age of the child and the level at which he is functioning in terms of language acquisition. And as mentioned by Ria, the items are given in a hierarchy. So you start with the earlier ones and then move upwards up to the child's age level. I hope that answers your query, Kamalika.
Yes, ma'am.
I think there are no further questions now. Yeah.
If there are any questions about any of the presentations made so far in our concluding session on Wednesday, we will address them. So please write to us or have your queries ready by Wednesday, our last session.
Thank you all for your participation, and special thank you to Ria, Tanushree, and Professor Belmonte. Looking forward to see you all again on 19th August, which will be the last day of this webinar series. We will extend the last session for half an hour to clarify all your doubts and address few unanswered questions from the previous sessions. And we would love everyone to participate in the same as we open the forum for discussion. Thank you so much once again.